This video is my first preview of the Baltimore Ravens' trip to Buffalo to take on the Bills in Week 1 of the NFL season, an opportunity for revenge, if you will, for the road loss against the Bills in the AFC Divisional Round matchup last year. I'm going to try to parse out some of my previews into smaller bites or smaller pieces of information, if you will. I tend to utilize long form, 30, 40 minutes for some of my previews. This one is probably way too soon. We're talking about a week and a half almost before the actual Sunday night matchup. And I'm going to focus on a play that the Ravens use now under Todd Monken, generally in the red zone. In some cases, short yardage situations, but generally inside the 20, occasionally just outside the 20. Prior to Todd Monken's arrival, however, under Greg Roman, specifically back in 2019 and 2020, you saw high-level usage of the diamond formation and the option play associated with it throughout the entirety of the football field, the length of the football field, if you will. Now, it generally shows up around the red zone as far out as maybe the 25 or the 28. Nonetheless, despite a level of predictability that I think is high, NFL teams have struggled to defend it, and I'm going to try to show you the reasons why. So this is what I mean when I say diamond formation. I mean the quarterback in the pistol and a running back set behind him, a tailback, if you will, and usually a tight end slash fullback to his right and a tight end slash fullback to his left. This ends up being a 1-by-1 formation. One receiver to the right and one receiver to the left. Sometimes they're split out. Occasionally you get a tight end to one side and a receiver to the other. This is a 12 personnel iteration of it. So that's Mark Andrews to the right of the quarterback and Isaiah Likely to the left. In the red zone usage of this, normally what you're getting is option football. And typically with option football, you're blocking for the dive. You're blocking for the give to the running back. And in this case, you have a counter scheme. So that looks typical. It's my opinion here that the Ravens are actually pulling off something that's rarely seen. They're blocking for the dive and they're blocking for the keep. In my opinion, the installation of this initially with Lamar was probably backwards. And what I mean is typically the option is taught you will give it unless the D-end slash edge defender does a particular thing, goes directly upfield in an undisciplined fashion. I think this particular option play was taught backwards originally, and it's one of the reasons why when Todd Monken got here, I said that there were some things that were already pre-installed. I think they basically tell Lamar, you're going to keep it unless this defensive end radically goes upfield, which would mean that it would be in our best interest to give it, right? Because the running back is going down the midline and veering behind the counter scheme away from the direction that Lamar flows, which in this case is to his right, the top side of the screen for us. And we get this natural two blockers out in front. In this case, it's Andrews. He was the front side fullback, if you will, and then likely he's the backside guy. So we've successfully blocked for the give to the tailback, in this case Justice Hill, and we've blocked for the keep, in this case Lamar Jackson, out in space behind two lead blockers. Really a death blow for any defense, but I think it's given the Bills trouble specifically, to be honest with you, in the red zone and just outside of it. I'll show you at least one play in this video from 2022. Look, the Bills are doing everything they can from a number standpoint. You got 9 in the box. This is the guy who's put in an insane amount of conflict, the Mike linebacker. And another thing the Ravens try to do, especially against the Bills, is go 21 personnel or 12 personnel and get the nickel off the field, their nickel defensive back. Historically, Taron Johnson, spectacular football player, and it's in the Ravens' best interest to get a 4-3 personnel on the field. There's the midline. The midline is running through the football, the center, the quarterback, and the tailback's body. Basically, it cuts the formation in half. And that Mike linebacker is important because he's on the midline. So what happens is the tight end slash fullback on the left, Isaiah Likely, he's crossing the midline. So he's going from the left-hand side of our screen to the right. But at the same time, you're getting the Mike linebacker kind of hesitating. Why? Because there's all this split flow. And what I mean by split flow is Lamar gets off the midline. The running back, Justice Hill, is veering to the left behind the counter scheme. This Mike linebacker also has to deal with whether or not Lamar is going to keep it. It's my contention that if this was initially taught to Lamar such that you say give the football unless this guy runs directly down the line of scrimmage to take the tailback, then, in which case you would keep it. That's not how this was originally taught to Lamar Jackson, in my opinion, or that's not how they're using it now. Basically, this could be a give read, this could be a keep read because Von Miller really, in effect, is doing nothing. Lamar ends up keeping it. It's what I consider to be his default mechanism for this particular play, diamond option. And we've got way more examples that I'm going to show you in this video of the Ravens using this in the red zone, just outside of it. There's Likely and Andrews, who were both lined up in the backfield as pseudo fullbacks, if you will, out in front to block for Lamar. Really ends up being quite easy, to be honest with you. It's a devastating red zone play that most teams have not had an answer for historically, even since Greg Roman, who was supposedly an option guy, left Baltimore. Earlier usage of it, and this is against the Bills once again, diamond formation. So you got J.K. Dobbins in the backfield, Ricard to the left, and I believe that's Josh Oliver to the right. I will spend a significant amount of time talking about what I consider to be the dual read nature of this. So this is the read man, and so you would say, I believe, if you believe what I'm saying to you, Lamar has been taught to keep the football unless that defensive end, the read man, goes radically upfield, which case that'll be a keep. If that defensive end goes down the line of scrimmage, well, then Lamar's by default being taught to keep it. Anyway, on this particular play, not all iterations of the Ravens option are the same, in my opinion. This one is one that they have taught, if you ask me, backwards. Now, I want to talk about the read that Josh Oliver has here. He's since moved on, obviously, but he's the backside tight end / fullback. And if you're a Ravens fan that's seen me talk about this before, my apologies for that, but I feel like I do one of these every year at the beginning of the season. Here's Oliver reading that defensive end at the same time that Lamar is. I'm talking about here and here. That's why I call it dual read. Other people have separate names for it. Oliver is looping around that defensive end because Lamar is keeping the football. And in fact, the defensive end himself is trying to deke Lamar a little bit. When you get the end zone angle, you'll see what I'm saying. He's kind of stepping up field, veering in, and then trying to veer back out. And in fact, he comes close to making the tackle. Lamar keeps it out in space. You do have two lead blockers out in front, being Ricard and Oliver, the backside tight end, who I believe was part of the initial read. And there's a lot to say about that in terms of why. Usually, you're talking about the distance between the quarterback's left foot in this case, which is on our right side of the screen, and the fullback, Ricard, and then the quarterback's right foot, which is on the left side of our screen, and Oliver. Normally, the shortest distance player is the guy who's going to cross the midline, and the guy who's further away from Lamar, in this case Ricard, is looping to the outside. That little cheat in the alignment is something that I think I picked up on years ago. You're welcome to let me know if you see examples of it that don't really fit that description. But either case, they're reading this defensive end, Lamar and Oliver, and in fact, many times you'll see that the tight end / fullback actually look over at that defensive end pre-snap. And in this case, you can see that both of those guys, it's kind of fuzzy a little bit, but there's Oliver's face mask, there's Lamar's face mask, both of them looking directly at the read man, deciding whether Lamar's going to keep it or give it. If you believe what I said earlier, my assertion is that Lamar's been taught to keep it unless that defensive end steps radically upfield, then in which case it would be a give. You can see the two blockers out in front. Once again, this is Oliver, who was reading it with Lamar. Ricard, big gain for Lamar out to the backside. Even though the Mike linebacker, I think 49, played it quite well. The Bills have really had no answer for this when we have run this, meaning inside of the red zone, just outside of it, the Ravens have had great success, particularly against the Bills' nickel structure. Same setup. This is last year against the Chargers. You can see diamond formation with Likely and Ricard, set back with Lamar along with Derrick Henry. Look at what the Chargers have done. They've got a 6-2 look, if you will. I mean 6-2, counting these two as inside linebackers, even though I believe that's actually Derwin James, who's technically considered a strong safety / nickel. And then you've got two other defensive backs walked up in the box. So they have put 10 guys in the box against a diamond formation. That's an appropriate reaction because this is a run formation for the Ravens. Now, other teams like the Kansas City Chiefs, it's not. They tend to go diamond in order to throw the football. Here's the read man. I think it's Mack. He's absolutely not stepping up the field, nor is he veering down the line of scrimmage to go after the running back, which in this case is Derrick Henry. This is the Mike linebacker. Compare him to 54 for the Bills. Hesitating for just a moment and then stepping wrong. And that's the guy right there who theoretically could be on Lamar a little bit tighter in pursuit trying to make the tackle. The read man, in my opinion, got a little bit confused, but he certainly did not give Lamar a keep read. If anything, he gave him the opposite. We're talking about this guy's reaction here. If he was to, in a traditional set, in a traditional reaction for a quarterback, if he was to step down the line of scrimmage, well, then Lamar, after stepping off the midline, is going to keep it and run out to the right-hand side of the screen, which we know is what we're going to see anyway. That's what the read quote should be in a traditional sense. If Mack was to go upfield, then Lamar would give this football to Henry, theoretically, and Henry would veer to the left-hand side of our screen behind the counter blocking scheme. What I mean when I say counter blocking scheme is the pulling right guard, Falele, and right tackle, Rosengarten. As an aside, you can see the read man has really done nothing that would indicate that this should be a keep read. I'll run it back one more time. If you're actually reading him from the standpoint of I'm going to give it unless, then that should absolutely have been a give read to Derrick Henry. And the Ravens generally successfully pull off being able to block for the give and block for the keep. Now, Lamar, does a wonderful job adjusting. The Ravens are trying to block this in a really difficult manner because of the counter scheme. They're trying to bring the guard, Macari, back on that nose tackle, and the Linderbaum all the way back on this defensive end / D tackle, whose helmet and body you can kind of see here. Ravens aren't really able to pull that off because it's a real difficult thing to accomplish alignment-wise. Look at this nose tackle. Linderbaum, is not engaging that nose tackle, but that nose tackle is running off his backside, creating a ton of disruption. That's neither Macari nor Linderbaum's fault. It's a nearly impossible blocking scheme for those guys to pull off. It's just made possible, really, by the trickery and complete ridiculousness that is Lamar Jackson when he keeps the ball out in space. And that's why I think the Ravens' default position for this concept is to tell Lamar to keep it unless. Last example here. And again, this is a little bit shorter than normal in terms of a preview, but I think I'm going to separate one of the Bills' foundational offensive plays or concepts to a separate video to focus on the Ravens' defense. So here's this goal line look, right, by the 49ers. This is 2023, I think Christmas Day. In fact, the Ravens are inside the 5, and there's some communication between Likely and Lamar, who's looking at Likely, and I believe they're talking about Bosa versus this defensive back here. So check out Likely as he moves back. He actually, when you get the end zone angle, you'll see it. He actually puts his hand up to his face mask. It almost kind of looks like he points here. In any case, this ends up being the read man. It's kind of a short option for the Ravens. And what I mean by that is Ricard's path takes him outside of Bosa just ever so slightly here, going to the outside shoulder of Bosa. Additional to that, the tight end, Kolar, is engaging the defensive back that I spoke about a moment ago. You wouldn't be blocking him if he were the read man, so we can reliably say that the read man is Bosa. Likely is reading him just like Oliver did on the play I showed you from 2022 against the Bills. Look at Likely's steps. He's reading Bosa, and so he likely is going to veer underneath. He's not going to block Bosa because Bosa is the read man, so likely he's going to go underneath and go get Fred Warner. One-on-one allows Gus Edwards to go downhill. In fact, when you watch Lamar from the All-22 here, you kind of see it being a late decision, if you ask me. I think the default position for him on these is separate from other option concepts that the Ravens have ran in the past and that they still run under Todd Monken. There's Likely. Lamar looking at Likely. I believe Likely is trying to decide or tell Lamar who he's reading, who Likely is reading, I should say, so that they're on the same page about who they're looking at. In this case, it's Bosa, who is stacked on Kolar. Now, Kolar's not going to block him. He's going to step out to this defensive end to give Lamar and Likely a very clear view of Bosa's steps. And what I'm talking about is there is Lamar. You can see Likely's helmet just here on the other side of Lamar, and he's looking directly at Bosa. We'll pull this back for a moment so you can see what I'm talking about. Additional to that, one thing Lamar is exceptional at compared to even other quarterbacks in the NFL on this pistol option stuff is getting off the midline. So this is the midline where the ball is snapped, the straight line between the center, quarterback, and the tailback. And Lamar gets his hips off the midline. Why? Generally, it's so the tailback can get to the midline and then veer to the backside so they can create as much spatial conflict for the read man between the running back's path. Let me change that color. running back's path would normally be something like this, perhaps not as abrupt, and the quarterback's path would be to get off the midline, and then run in this direction to our right, the right-hand side of the offense, trying to create as much space as possible between where the read man defensive end could make the tackle on the running back and where he would have to defend the quarterback. Basically, create more space in the shortest amount of time possible such that no read man in the NFL can play both. The contention that I have is that this is a foundational play for the Ravens in certain situations, the red zone primarily, because it's taught in a backwards manner, or it's read in a backwards manner, if you will. Not wrong, and I actually believe that's why a lot of traditional option people, option football guys, at times in the past have said Lamar will misread things, or that he's being told what to read. I myself in the past have at times categorized or described something as a misread. It's entirely possible that some of those are, whether they were described or evaluated by me or others. I think this is a play concept that illustrates that Lamar's ability to read multiple option concepts can put the defense in conflict in a variety of ways. The Ravens, under Todd Monken, and previously under Greg Roman, had multiple versions of each particular option play. And Lamar is capable of reading it in a typical manner, which is you're going to give the ball to the running back, the dive man, unless the defensive end does this, or read it in an inverted fashion, if you will. And that's what I think this diamond option is. I think it's an inverted or perhaps backwards read for Lamar that he was taught in 2019 or 2020. And the manner or the procedure for that is you're going to keep the ball unless the defensive end does that. As a result, I think this has continued to confound well-prepared, smart, very fast and physical defenses, some at times the Buffalo Bills. This is a play that I think you'll see early in week one if the Ravens get down in the red zone because it's safe. It's up to Lamar. Number one, that there is a mesh, meaning there is a mesh between the quarterback and the running back, whether it was Gus Edwards from 2023, Derrick Henry or Justice Hill in 2024. But the mesh occurs in a manner that's slightly different from other option concepts that you see from the Ravens and other teams in the NFL, college, or even high school, in that they've taught this to Lamar in an inverted fashion. He's a totally unique entity when it comes to the option because he can read so many different concepts in a variety of ways that the defense has no way of knowing what should or should not be happening, and therefore has tremendous difficulty defending it. In any case, I only showed you, I think, 4 plays here. The video went on quite long. My goal is to put out a bunch of these like 15-minute previews on the week 1 matchup between the Ravens and the Bills because I think we're in for another exciting game that comes down to late in the fourth quarter. Appreciate you guys' time, man. If you enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section, number 1. Number 2, if you think other Ravens fans would enjoy this preview, albeit an abbreviated one, then please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media to help this content get more reach.